Hi, welcome to another Conversations with Coach Lloyd. Today, my guest is Jessica Post. Jessica is the president of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee in Washington, D.C. There, she leads the Democrats' effort to win state legislatures across the country. Jessica started triathlon as a balance to her busy work life and completed her first race in 2011, the DC Triathlon Sprint distance. Since then, Jessica has continued racing every year. Her greatest triathlon accomplishment was getting through 70.3 training and finishing Beach to Battleship 70.3 in 2015. Please welcome my guest, Jessica Post.
Thanks so much, Coach Lloyd. I'm thrilled to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I'm on vacation, so I may have some topical training tips for while you're on vacation or being away.
That's perfect. That's perfect because that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, because I know that's your specialty. Over the years, I know you travel a ton for work, but somehow you managed all of that to do triathlon. So what was your first triathlon? Or, were you always a triathlete? Is this something that you picked up later in life, or, you've always been doing it?
Oh, it's definitely later in life. I mean, I like to say that I was the kid in gym class that didn't want to run the mile. I was always like, I never thought I would be a runner. I played college club lacrosse, and I was, like the slowest girl on the team. So it was just not a part of it. But when I moved to DC, I was used to campaign life where you work 12 hours a day and there's, not a lot of room for anything else. And so my colleagues said, hey, you need to get a hobby. And so of all things, I started running, the beautiful running scenery in DC. And then eventually my office mate, Emily Piscini, who's a On Point Fitness client as well, suggested that I consider training for a triathlon. And so I did. And it was so unexpected that people in my Facebook feed thought I was literally joking when I posted that I had signed up for one.
So when you posted it, in the office, no one took it serious. They thought you were playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were like, okay, and then my friends from college were like, they literally thought it was a joke that I was that it was something that I was going to do, and I posted it on Facebook. But I was able to do it, and I think I was inspired because I did I was going swimming. I did a 12-mile ride on a cruiser bike. And I asked hey, can I do the try on a cruiser bike? Because I had a cruiser bike at home, a single speed. And then I ran. And so I thought, maybe this is something I can do. And then Emily Piscini in her wisdom said hey, you probably need to work on swimming and you need to get a coach. So that's how we ended up meeting.
It's always good to have that friend who, pulls you to the side and gives you that good advice. I like your effort, but let's get some skills behind that gusto.
Yes, exactly.
So you weren't running, no running, no swimming, just had a cruiser as your bike at home. Now, what kind of time frame are we talking from your decision to, hey, yeah, I'm going to do this, and when the race was?
Well, so I had run a half marathon, so I had some running base, but I'm not a natural runner at all. And so I think, and when we met, I sat down at the information session, and I remember saying you went through all the stuff that you would talk about, and I'm like, well, what if you don't personally believe that you can do this? And you said, well, we'll work on that too. So that's that's my advice to everybody. But yeah, no swimming background. And so what Emily said, hey, you should try to work on something in the off season. So I think I decided in January that I was going to do DC Tri in June. Okay. And so then I signed up for total immersion swimming with you to learn a little more, because I wasn't a high school swimmer or college swimmer. I liked the water, but I wasn't afraid of the water, but I knew that I didn't know how to endurance swim at all. And so I worked on that actually. Like I actually was very dedicated and worked on that. And then eventually bought a road bike instead of my cruiser after I like went back and forth on how I thought I would do the try on my cruiser. So I eventually gave my cruiser away, but I thought that was going to be my life.
So you did have some run background, half marathon under your belt. You know, as you say, may not have been fast, but you had that experience. So you weren't starting really completely without an endurance background. You had a little bit of history there that made it seem, plausible to jump into tries.
Yeah, and I had done some 5Ks, like short races, just to kind of stay in shape and be a compliment to my life in DC. But I really didn't. I mean, to be honest, I really didn't consider myself a runner. I was very nervous and very open to coaching. Emily bought me a copy of Triathlon Training for Dummies, and she was like, "I hope you're not offended." And I opened it up, and I'm like, "No." So every morning at breakfast, I would like go through Triathlon Training for Dummies. So that, yes, I needed a lot of help.
Yeah, I mean, getting the book so you have like a guide of what to do. I'm amused at her, like, hey, don't be offended by.
Right. I was like, I'm not offended. I need this. I know I need it. So I was very, very open to coaching. Very open.
So, all right. So fast forward me, you've gone through training. So that's in January. The race is in June. So, that's a good 5-6 months that you have to get ready for it. How does training work for you when you've got a full travel schedule? I mean, you're on the road, or at the time you were on the road a lot, but now you're trying to, embark on a new venture. So tell me about, getting training for something new under your belt, but again, still managing being on the road.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. And I think a lot of people think they travel out for their jobs. At the time, I would go places for a month and do like get out the vote, or in some of my other jobs, I traveled Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Thursday of every week. And so you get better at traveling. But so I had to figure out, well, how am I going to get this training in? And I fortunately was able to choose the hotels that I stayed at. So I often would figure out a hotel in like current times. I'll figure out a hotel that had a Peloton or a spin bike in the gym. I think a lot of people say, like, see if there's a hotel gym. That's kind of 101. Yeah, like, of course, right. Do that for sure.
Okay, so that puts out a good point, because I think the first go-to response is always see if they have a gym.
Yeah.
But then I know I've gone on travel and it's had a gym, but it's like, I can't do anything for, they've got weights in the corner, but I'm not right. I'm not in the weightlifting season right now. Yes.
And there's like the world's oldest like elliptical in the corner that's like collecting dust, and you're like, this wasn't the best. This wasn't the best. I try to see if I can find like photos of the gym online.
Okay, so for those who are traveling, gym 101, but you got to take it a step further now, and you're looking for what, a Peloton or something else in
yes,
the lineup.
Absolutely. So if you can select your own hotel, Westin has a variety of workout things, and some of the Westins actually are less expensive than you would think. So they have Pelotons in almost every Westin. There's also a Peloton hotel finder on Peloton.com, so you can look at that too if it's just easy to be able to go downstairs and knock out a spin class and not leave the hotel. Okay. You also can look, there's ratings of the best hotel gyms on different websites if you really are interested. But yeah, you're looking for a spin bike and a treadmill, really. And then maybe a place with running path. Westins even have like a run concierge. So they'll take you, so they'll like take you on a 5K in the morning. They have loaner equipment, including like foam rollers, yoga mats, And they'll even, and this is pre-COVID, so this may have changed, they'll even loan you workout clothes. I never trusted them to have like the right sports bra, but for guys, right, like there's, they'll loan you like running shoes and like a pair of running shoes and a shirt and like a t-shirt and shorts to work out in.
Okay, so I've now got options. So I take it since when you started in 2011 to now, fast forward 10 years, now we're talking about apps with hotel finders versus I'm sure that, I'm sure there were apps with that.
That's right. Yes.
Because I don't think Peloton was around,
No.
10 years ago.
If it was, I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
I didn't see the commercial back then.
So back in the day, so when I first started traveling, I was on Google Maps all the time. And so I would do whatever work I could do on the airplane internet, which, did exist back then, to just knock out whatever prep work. And then I would take a few minutes and look at the hotel where I was staying at to try to figure out, was there a community center or a gym that I could pay a drop-in fee to go to?
Okay.
If you have a rental car, it's a lot easier. If you don't have a rental car, you can take a Lyft or figure out a way to sort of go to these places if you have a little bit of extra time. Normally, like a community center, if they have a pool, you can pay, sometimes it's $7, like a super nominal drop-in fee, even as a non-resident to go there. The other hack is US Masters Swim. So I joined Masters Swim, and I was at Masters Swim, so USMS. Go on that website. They have club finders, but they also have it's a really great source to find pools to swim in, like 25-meter pools, instead of trying to swim in your hotel pool like for 3 strokes and then just practice your flip turn, which I have done. I've had to hack that out before.
See, I always my basic, does the hotel have a gym 101 approach was, do you have a hotel pool? And that would be kind of like the extent of, when I'm traveling, I thought I was doing something good, but then you'd get there and it's like, it's not quite, lap swim ready, more splash pool, recreational. We can get 1 extra star on our rating because we have a pool. And it never dawned on me, to go that extra step to say, okay, what other venues may have had a pool near me or whatever. It was always, okay, what did my hotel have to offer? And my search kind of stopped there. I thought I was doing something, and I'd always be disappointed.
Well, if you can choose your own hotel, there are some that do have lap pools.
Okay.
And so if you were there, for example, there's a hotel in downtown Phoenix that has a 25-meter lap pool. And so I opted to stay there when I traveled once. Again, if you can choose your own hotel, if you're at some sort of a conference, exactly, like figure out the situation in your hotel gym, but then also just, you can Google like spin class. You can go into Google Maps and be like, spin class or spin studio if you're trying to find that kind of a thing. Okay. Or again, like a nearby pool is really easy to get to, especially if you have a rental car. If you don't, again, you can take a Lyft. Remember, your priority is getting your training in. So You're willing to spend a little bit. You may be able to expense it, but you're willing to spend a little bit to get it done.
Now I've not heard of the run concierge where they'll take you on a run. So how does that work? Do I have to like schedule that? Do I say what distance I want to run? I mean, I'm fascinated by that concept.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I honestly have never taken advantage of it because I'm a slow runner, so I'm always nervous that I'll get out there and it'll be like people that are training for the Boston Marathon, but so Weston has at many of their hotels a run concierge. And so the idea is that you meet at a preset time. Sometimes it's like 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, and they'll do it, let's say Tuesday and Thursday, and they will take you on a running route that's kind of a tour of the city. Okay. If not, they sometimes even have and normally it's like a 5K, about 3.1 miles. Sometimes they do 5-mile routes. And then typically at the front desk, they have, and this is true at some other hotels too, but almost always at a Westin, you can go to the front desk and say, hey, do you have a card with the running route on it? And so they'll hand you like, here's a 3-mile loop or here's a 5-mile loop.
Okay.
So before, like Map My Run was as user friendly, or like your Garmin that can do an out and back, it shows you where to go. And so that helps, of course, with safety, and everything else. So those are great options too. If you, and I'm sure some other hotels have some of these benefits too.
It never even dawned on me to, ask the front desk, where to go, or, ask running routes from them, but, they would know.
Yes.
They would know. So that's great.
Sometimes they don't, but yes.
Right. But I mean, it never dawned on me to ask, but now when I look at hotels, that might be something that you look into to say, hey, do they have that service, that run concierge? And then if not, but you can even still ask the front desk for running routes, and they may have a program, like that at that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now taking me back to your training for that first race, you're traveling, you're using all these, features of, well, not Peloton at the time, but, spin studios and, what pools are available in the area and stuff like that. Walk me through your training as you're gearing up to the race.
Well, of course, all like the long runs and rides I would do on the weekend. And then, I think I forget, like 2 days of swimming, 2 days of bike. And I had this, well, actually, I think she owns a spin studio now. I had this incredible, when I was at home, I had this incredible spin instructor, and I thanked her every mile on the bike course. But then when I would travel, I'd look for spin studios. For me, I'm a real, if I sign up for it, it's an appointment, I'm much more likely to do it. Okay. And so that was one way I did it. And then often I would just, get the run in on a treadmill in the, and I think, I don't know if that season it was essentially just about covering the distance, right? That was the main objective. And so we were doing everything we could to build endurance. I also packed race nutrition with me and just basic snacks. So if you get up and have to go to a morning class, you have a granola bar or something to have with your coffee, and that is me, on the way out the door. Or if you need a snack before a dinner, it's just nice to have that stuff with you, or to have a little race nutrition to get you going.
Okay. Now I've got a question here from Marsha. Do you ever rent a bike when traveling in order to train, or do you take yours with you?
Yeah, I mean, when I travel for work, right, there's not really an option to check a bike. And while I have, obviously, I've shipped my bike and I did part of RAGBRAI shipping my bike. But normally for business travel, no. But what I have done is rented a road bike. I did that actually the last time I was down here in Florida. There's a beautiful coastal path that's 30 miles long that I'd always wanted to ride. And so and the nice thing about vacation communities is they'll deliver the rental bike to you. So you don't even have to think about bike rack situation. That's just part of the rental fee. And they have bike helmets. So I brought my pedals. I didn't bring my seat, which I grew to regret. Bought, packed my bike shorts, gloves, and bike shoes. And then I actually, in this case, didn't even have to bring my pedals. They were able to put speed plays on the bike. And so I just brought my shoes and gloves and was ready to go. So I was able to ride that bike back and forth. And
okay. So,
it was, awesome.
So sometimes you're able to, instead of doing a spin class, depending on where you're going to go, you may even have the option to rent one.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly inexpensive, especially if you're there a long time. Normally the first day is let's say it's I don't know, like $70 to $100. So when I was in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, I was there for a month, and I decided to rent a road bike to be able to pedal around the lakes. And typically it's just like $10 extra a day. And they have like monthly rates after that. So, and it's fun. Also, you can send if you have been like professionally fit, you can just email your fit, and then they'll do it. They'll set it up based on your fitter's recommendations.
Yeah.
And so they'll build that bike out, or they'll fit it to you while you're there.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I've never thought about renting bikes. There's only a couple places I've been to where, they have bikes to rent, and they usually, like the cruisers or whatever,
Yeah.
But then other locations, I know out in California, San Francisco, Bay Area, there's shops that, have road bikes or even tri bikes that you can rent when you're traveling. If you're in those cities, it just kind of depends. So you don't even have to get stuck in a spin studio or a stationary bike when you hit up those kind of cities.
Yeah, and look, often when you travel, if you are able to rent a bike, sometimes the people you're visiting are really interested in showing you around town, whether it's for work or personal. There's also some hotels that have bikes, like the hotel that I stay at when I'm in San Francisco near the airport and it's not a road bike, but it has like a mountain bike that you could take out. And so I've definitely done that on like a beautiful path near the airport when I'm out there. And that's also something you could do during your layover. If during your layover, or if you get stuck somewhere. So one of my biggest hacks that I tell everybody is you can work out on your layover. So if you have, which is
tell me more.
Yes. Okay. So if you are in the Detroit airport, you are able to go into, I feel like a Westin advertisement, but there's a Westin at the Detroit airport. They have Peloton bikes in the and this is I think it's in whatever the main terminal is at the Detroit airport. So you go in, they have a shower, they have a hot tub and a pool, and they have a huge gym with Pelotons and also treadmills, etc. So what I'll do, I'm like, okay, well, so I was flying in the Midwest all the time. So I was in Detroit all the time. And so sometimes there would be delays, and I'd be like, okay, well, if I have an hour, I can go get a workout in. And, since I had all my stuff in my carry-on, I could go shower. They have towels and shampoo there also, like in the little area. So I could even shower and like get back on the plane. So that's, and it's not just, there's other options for that. Like there's a way to do that at O'Hare as well, to find a gym in the terminal. It just takes a little bit of planning, but that's one of my favorite things to do if we have a delay.
Yeah.
And often a flight with a longer layover, if you have to have a layover, is less expensive. So there were times where I would just take advantage of that. Like I would be like, okay, so we have a 3-hour layover in Detroit. I'm going to pop out. There's like a separate security area.
Yeah.
So you also want to be like TSA pre-check and clear, but that's just so you can get out and in. There are other times where I've left the airport and tried to see if I could go to a gym near the airport on a long layover. So those are all options to pop out. But yeah, that's one of my favorite hacks.
I guess I would just have to, if I'm traveling, I would just have to Google where, what airport has those types of, amenities while I'm booking my ticket, to figure out like, hey, okay, I'm staying over here, so I might as well take I can take advantage of a longer layover if I connect through this particular city. So you know what? Tell the HR like, hey, when you're booking my ticket, and I have to get routed and I have to get a layover, route me through this particular area if possible. I mean, you're not going out of your way, but you're just kind of taking advantage of what's available.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to do a lot of traveling.
You can Google airport gyms, and there's a few write-ups on them. There's I think one pre-security, or there was pre-COVID, called Rome at BWI. So you could also try to get to the airport a little early. They also had, I don't know if they're still open, but they have loaner clothes sometimes, and like lockers and showers. So So that's one of my best hacks. So then when you land, you can, especially if you're landing late, you can just go home and know that you've at least knocked out like one element of your training.
Right. Oh yeah, and I did not know about the airport gyms, in that way. That you can really, schedule it, get it in, in a layover. That is, I'm gonna have to look for a flight where I got a layover now.
Yeah, if you're
just to see where I end up. I've got a 2-hour layover. I'm gonna go and test this out. Take my pre-check. Run out to the gym wherever.
Yes. Oh, Lloyd, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm gonna try that the next time to make sure I just see it, even if I have to go outside to the next terminal, but I have my pre-check with me. That just I can't even wrap my mind around that one. That's just crazy.
Yeah. There is one in O'Hare too, which is a nightmare of an airport. So if your flight gets canceled in O'Hare, this is also an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so you've trained up for the race. Now we hit June. So tell me about the first race experience.
So, Lloyd, I am not a morning person, and I run sort of notoriously late to things. And the morning of DC Tri, it was no different. So my poor husband drove me to the race. We didn't understand how many road closures would be there because we lived in Southwest DC. We lived really close to the race site at DC Tri. I barely get in before transition closes. Everyone is worried, but this is actually just like a way that I do it. So I set up my transition like in a haste because I'm like, even if I throw my backpack into transition, it'll be okay. But then, I got in line, my swim wave was at the end. We swam in the Potomac, right? Which, so I like at your advice sort of, swim started kind of on the outside. And I think the biggest shock to me in this, I probably should have practiced the swim to bike transition because I get on the bike and I'm like, I'm soaking wet. Like you really don't dry off.
Go figure. After a swim, you're wet.
I know. But somehow I thought I guess I'll have time to dry off before I hop on the bike. No. And as Emily reminded me, you need to run through transition because Jessica, you are in a race. And I was like, well, what can I change? Or can I just get into a different situation? But yeah, you're soaking, you're dripping when you get on the bike, right? Which makes intuitive sense, but somehow I didn't pick that up.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for sprint, Olympic, and half distance, 70.3 races, there generally no changing tents or anything like that. You're just out in the open. I think you first get the option of a wardrobe change when you do the long course, the iron distance, just so folks are clear. All right, so you finish up this swim, you come out and you're wet. Now you got to run through transition. All right, keep going.
So I'm and fortunately, having a coach, there were people, I went to the information session just as an aside that were so wait, so do you just do the race in your swimsuit or how does it work? So it was a lot of people's first races. Unfortunately, I'd read the athlete guide, which is, I would recommend for people in their first race, and just generally read the athlete guide. I went to the pre-race briefing. So I knew that what the transition would be like. And, I'm trying to put my socks on, but I was told to put sort of powder in the socks, but this is one of the more difficult things. Then you're really kind of disoriented. And so you're putting can I get my bike gloves on? And, you had said put your helmet, put the sunglasses on the helmet, and I'd put the bike gloves on the somehow I was able to do this on the end of the bike, candles to remind me to put them on. So I do that, somehow get out on the bike. It's a great ride. Again, I'm thinking Letitia, my spin instructor, the entire time, but really enjoyed the ride. And then came the run. So we practice a lot, like the transition from biking to running, and we do a lot of that work. But I like hadn't really practiced it in a race, so it was like your legs are dead. And then DC Tri, like it was so like, do you remember what the run distance was? It was like 4.2 or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was the standard 5K.
I will tell you, it was not the standard 5K, because I was expecting the standard 5K. And so, the run is still like, even though I had the run background, I still like didn't love it. And so there's like a point where you think you are running to the finish line. Like you see the finish line like right in front of you, and then they made you turn off. And I was like, furious, absolutely furious. But, fortunately, some of my on-point teammates, I remember seeing Renato on the run, and, of course, some of my teammates were there. I think I was able to get a post-race massage. So it was great. Like I think I have to admit, I thought that I would like cross the finish line and I would be like magically transformed into like I don't know, like a thin Amazon woman. that was not my situation. And so that's the other message that I would say, like, you can accomplish this. There's all shapes and sizes at triathlons.
So you didn't transform into a thin Amazon, but were you bitten by the bug to say, hey, I want to keep doing this? Or, whereas you're like, I hate this and I'll never do this again. What was that feeling when you wrapped it up and realized like your perspective had to be adjusted for, everybody's in the sport. It's not a cookie cutter perspective of, who's an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, to me, actually crossing that finish line was really affirming. As the girl who didn't like running the mile in gym class, if I would go to workout classes, I felt like a little bit nervous. And so it made me feel like I could go to any workout class, like I'd accomplished this big thing. So it really instilled like a ton of confidence in me. But yeah, I was bit by the bug, and then I signed up for Nations, which is at the end of that year. And I don't know if I actually did some tries in between. I may have done Oshkosh Tri, which is the place that I rented my first road bike for a month. I was just there for work, and there was a try, and I decided I was going to go race it.
Well, you can't just roll through that. You can't just roll. Let's back up a second there. Okay, so you're traveling for work. Okay, so we get the DC Tri Sprint. Check that off your list. It's like, okay, I'm a triathlete now. Fast forward into it's still work season, travel season within work. You find yourself on a trip to Oshkosh, Wisconsin during the season, and while you're there, there's like just a race, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this race.
Yeah, and so I actually was like pleasantly surprised. So during Get Out the Vote weekend, which is one of the busiest weekends, if you're on a campaign, and I was there to help with Get Out the Vote. I was there the last month to help with a women's campaign. I was on the ground. And I saw that there was a triathlon, and I thought, well, okay, like the GOTV, because I was working, 7 days a week. And so I was going to the Y in the morning to try to get in I was able to do like a guest pass at a local Y, which I would just to say another hack. You can normally use a Y for free or for $5, like if you're a Y member back at home. So that's just, another hack. So I see this try, and I'm like, is this crazy? And I decided to sign up for it, and it ended up being a great experience. It was one of those small races where you can bring your bike right to transition. Of course, I didn't actually tell a lot of the people I was working with that I was doing it, because I didn't want to, I didn't want them to think that I wasn't focused.
Right.
So the swim was in like this beautiful lake, and then it was like in the rolling countryside of Wisconsin, like red barns and black and white spotted cows. And then I forget sort of what the run was like, but it was cool. And my husband was also there for work, and he was able to drop me off at transition. And
so did you know the race was there before you went out there, or after you
No.
got out there?
After I got out there.
Okay.
I think I saw a flyer, like in a coffee shop or something, or at the Y, and I
Right.
thought, oh, well, maybe I'll do this. And so that's part of the reason I'm like, okay, well, I'll rent this road bike for this race. And I like would ride it in the morning sometimes to get training in. But yeah, it was awesome. But I will say, then I had to go into what they call like the get out the vote boiler room, like regionally. So where you're like monitoring like what voters are getting out, like what volunteers are in. And I was exhausted, but I made it through the day. But it's definitely like one of the, like, it's definitely like an achievement unlocked for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking of like, hey, I'm out here for a while, and I'm just going to, sign up for this race because I'm in town.
Yes.
Like, oh, you got a 5K, sure. Oh, you got a sprint triathlon going on. You know what? Sign me up. I'm here for the weekend.
I like the thing that I don't remember is if I had my kit or not. I should like go back and look at the pictures because I really remember like, but I had everything else, because I knew I was
you were out there training.
right. So I'd run, and that's really like running shoes, swim cap. It doesn't take up a lot of space. Throw it all in your suitcase.
Okay, that is great. So if you're traveling, take your kit, take your gear, because you never know if you're there for an extended period. You might just sign up for a race when you get there.
Yes.
So okay. So all right. So we've done Oshkosh on the fly.
Yes.
I take it you're happy with the result because hey, you slipped it in the middle of the campaign and still kept working.
Yeah.
So that's the sprint distance, Olympic distance. What then made you say, okay, I want to now do the half?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I had seen so many of our teammates. I had gone up when my friend Emily and teammate did the 70.3 in Rhode Island. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is something I could never do. Like, there's no way that I could get to this accomplishment. But I knew that I had run a half marathon and I had actually run like a half marathon. And like, for me, what was a pretty decent time. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can do it. But the thing is, Lloyd, like I'm not fast at basically anything. And so we talked and I found something where the swim had a current, beach to Battleship in North Carolina.
Okay.
The bike was super flat and the run course was like essentially pretty flat in Wilmington, North Carolina. And the thing that I was really afraid of, first of all, like you may not, or you probably remember having to like intervene in the middle of my training season. And because I was traveling, I had been promoted. I had like a new job and so I just wasn't getting it in. And I remember you called and you were like, hey, you're not going to get over the finish line. You got to train.
The travel was getting extensive.
Yes.
And the workouts, while they were getting in there, they weren't long enough.
They were not long enough. And then also, I have to tell you, like, if you're not fast, those workouts take a long time. So we figured out a few things. Like one, I wrote to the race director and said, is there a time cutoff? Because we're looking at my times and we're thinking, hey, if this is an 8-hour, 30-minute cutoff, there's no way that we can make this happen. Like, not going to get over the finish line. So the race director said, no, like it's not an Ironman. It now is an Ironman, but at the time, hey, it's not an Ironman. And they're like, also there's a 140.6 happening at the same time. And so everything's still open. So that also made for me as like, as like one of the like bottom finishers, like other people were still on the race course. So that was great. So that's something I would recommend. And, we did the same thing recently. I wanted to race Williamsburg, the 70.3, for the Fast Chicks takeover. Shout out Fast Chicks. But they said the same thing. They're like, and it's important to note, like on the website and in the athlete's guide, they said 8 hours, 30 minutes. And then Rev 3, like God bless, said, no, if you get over the finish line, like we keep the finish line open until the last finisher. So I would just recommend for athletes to think about emailing, calling the race director, and just asking those questions, because often they just want you to race.
So that's interesting, because it's like, at the time, Beach to Battleship was an independent event, and everyone is accustomed to the Ironman branded events and their standard cutoff times. But it was interesting when you reached out to the race director, and just asked the question, which, I was like, wow, that's, that's impressive that, so you reached out and they say, hey, sure. If you keep moving, we'll be here at the finish line waiting for you.
So it's like a giant weight lifted off my shoulders. I knew, we talked about, I knew I had to really step up my training. And this is when we figured out I lived about 8 miles from work. And so I started bike commuting in and out to just get saddle time on the week, and then adding some Haynes Point loops to just get time in the saddle. And that ended up being a really good way for me to be able to multitask and just at least get in some saddle time.
Okay. So email race directors and ask for those who aren't, planning to win their age group, but they're strong enough and they have enough endurance to keep on pushing, reaching out to the race director, even if the website says, here's the cutoffs, it doesn't hurt to reach out and ask the question. Like, all they can do is say no, but you may find out that they're open to doing that. And, you finishing as long as you keep moving. And then now adding in commuting miles on your bike to work is another good way to kind of slip that training in if you've got to do a lot. So now tell me, so you signed up for Beach to Battleship. Tell me about how that 70.3 went for you. How was it?
So, once again, I have to tell you, like I said, I was promoted at work. So I was going through kind of a time of stress. Apologies, a luggage cart is being rolled through. You can hear that in the background. So anyway, it's a stressful time at work, and we're stressed about this race, right? So I had gone down and actually joined up with a team down in Wilmington that Lloyd that you had a contact with. And so I had actually gone out and rode some of the course, run some of the course. I went to, a weekend clinic, and it was really good for me. That helped a lot. But so I wake up on race day, and of course I wake wake up late, don't want to leave. And I wake up with a sinus infection, so I'm sick, but I'm like, okay, well, you trained all this time. You've got to at least go try. So get in a transition late. Sammy, the coach down there, was yelling at me. Lloyd, I think you were just shaking your head with Marsha. And so I set up my stuff, get in transition. I had not trained with the sort of thin chamois bike shorts. So I had to change in the transition area. But I was able to get the swim in really, really quickly, which was great. We saw dolphins when we were at the swim start. Candace, our teammate, raced it as well. And then her uncle, who's now also a triathlete, was there. So I get to T1, still not feeling great, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm here, so I'm going to try to finish this. And then I get on the bike, and after changing into real bike shorts, and so long T1. So the first 10 miles of the bike are brutal, right? I don't know what's wrong. I feel like I can't get my legs to work. And then I get onto sort of the more main part of the bike course, and I drop my chain. So I have to jump off the bike, get my chain back on. But, at least I'm not thinking I'm going to DNF, right? I'm not going to finish. Then there was a serious headwind. And so I'd rode this area before without a headwind, which was not great. But so that was sort of the first half. It was just going very slowly. And I don't have aero bars on my road bike. So it was trying to tuck in, going 11 miles an hour at top effort. But then on the way back, I picked up the wind, I think, and I also just like really wanted to be off the bike. And so I sped back into transition, like overperformed expectations. But then I got into transition and I walked right by my bag that I'd like marked up with all on point stuff, but somehow I walked right by it. I'm walking all around, and then I decided to like I changed into running shorts like in the bathroom because it was an indoor transition area. And I'm in the bathroom and I'm like, oh, there's like Vaseline here. That's thoughtful. Like, let me refix my. So I'm in transition for like 20 minutes. And 20-minute transition.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know.
My goodness.
I don't know where the time went. Like, and I think I was like a little tanked from the end of the bike course. So
wow.
I get out. I get out and my husband's like, was there a popcorn machine in there? What? Like, were you like sitting there eating popcorn, like waiting?
Like, were you, it's like almost you were deciding whether you were going to come back out or not.
Yes, that's what I really was like, yeah, I'll go. So, so I get back on the run course and it's just great. Like, it's like very, moss covered trees and I'm like, legs are kind of shot, but it's very like light at the end of the tunnel. Like, you're finishing this. And I knew that even if I had to sort of walk it, I would get through it. But fortunately I didn't. I just did a run walk. I remember I like saw salt and I'm like, oh, like I'm going to violate one of the core principles of triathlon, nothing new on race day. And it's time for me to try. Didn't train with salt, have never tried to like, but there's like a salt station, like being a sponsored salt station. And so my husband's like, I'm going to call Lloyd. Lloyd says no salt. Do not take the salt. So he's like able to be on the course. So I'm like, okay, no salt. So I continue like running on. And it was good.
I'm glad I had some eyes on the course there, to save you from yourself.
I remember like running slowly, like chatting with Candace, and Candace is really trying to do this race for time. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, didn't want to delay you. I'm just like, I'm in a great place. But yeah, I was super happy. And then, people were like, oh, if you're out here doing this, I could be doing it too, right? And I took that as like, I didn't like internalize that as like body shaming. I was just like, okay, yes, it is impressive that I'm doing it. So I had really a good mindset. And then afterwards, it was just rough. Like, I continued to be very sick. But it was good. It was a great experience. And I remember seeing you at the finish line. I was in tears. I think I've never seen anybody happier, Lloyd, than seeing you at that finish line.
Yeah, it was great to see you come through, especially since you weren't feeling well to begin, and then all the work that you had put in. So I think, I was super excited for you to get it, checked off.
The one thing I promised myself, thinking about future 70.3 training, there was one day that on my schedule, I had to ride 25 miles and run 6 miles. This was on a Wednesday, like not a weekend ride. And I'm like, remember this moment when you're thinking about signing up for another 70.3, this Wednesday where you have to. And I remember I like finished it, not a morning person, like finished the run at night. It was like 11:45 p.m. And I'm like, well, I'm done with the run now. Like, I guess I can go to bed.
So now that you are, you've done a 70.3, a half, check that off some years ago. Are you planning to do more? Are you, where are you in your triathlon journey, moving forward? I know with, still, traveling may not be as much, but there's still a component to it with your job. Where's triathlon fitting in and, distances for you now?
Yeah. I think the thing, 70.3, I think, is a really good distance for me. Like, I really liked it, but you have to, and this would be advice that I would give you, have to be realistic with, can you get the training in? There's a 70.3 down here in Northern Florida that I wanted to do. And there was just no way that I could get trained up for it. It was an Ironman branded race with a cutoff. So I would love to do another 70.3 at some point. But I think it would need to be at a time where it's not as busy. And, one thing I try to do is during election years, which are a lot busier for us. At work, I typically, don't have really like grand triathlon ambitions because they just get disrupted by the work pattern. And so normally it's the 2015 instead of 2014 where I plan to do a longer race. So I would recommend that too. And typically we think years in advance about like what would be the timing, if things are coming up at work, like what would be the timing on doing a race.
Okay, so I like that. So even, as you're looking at your work schedule, you're thinking about, projects that are going to be 6 months, a year. For you, your election years are always going to be super busy. So avoid major triathlon stuff that time and may do some just for fun or something shorter just to stay fit. But then in the off years, that's when you're like, okay, now let me dive in. So those people who travel a lot or have crazy hectic jobs, that's probably one way for them to approach their training season or their training athletic goals, is not every season or every year you're doing something massive, but maybe like every other season or something.
For sure. And I think it also helps with training discipline. One thing that I didn't quite understand when I started training was, how much, because you do have to give up some things. Like you don't have to give up everything, but if you're riding at 8 a.m. on a Sunday, those 2 beers that you may have had on Saturday hit a little bit different when you wake up in the morning. These are lessons I have learned the hard way. So it's also a consideration there. Like when's there a time? I actually was lucky that I got promoted right before my 70.3 because it meant that I wasn't traveling. And so I was able to do, more bike commuting, more things like that. And that would have been more difficult being on the road.
Okay. I like that idea of you don't have to give everything up. You just got to know how it's going to hit you the next day.
Yes.
So it's not that you got to give up the 2 beers. It's just knowing that, hey, when you wake up for that 8 a.m. ride, it is what it is. so no one's saying you've got to give up the 2 beers on Saturday night. It's just, just know what it's going to feel like on Sunday.
They feel a lot different at like getting up at 7 a.m. than getting up at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. They really do. 10 a.m. you're like, oh, I'm fine. 7 a.m. you're like, oh, that was a mistake. That was maybe not for everybody, but for me.
I mean, you got to know yourself. You got to know like, hey, I'm gonna save these 2 beers for after my triathlon season is over. When I get to sleep in until 10 o'clock versus I've got a morning run or a morning ride.
Or the day before my rest day, right? Like there's other options.
So you got to take that in consideration in the planning. So you just got to move things around. You can get it all, but you just got to move it around a tad bit.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Jessica, I just want to thank you for taking the time. The tips that you shared, I love them. I mean, so I've got to pack my gear when I'm going on the road, put it in my carry-on. Places that you go to are going to have, potential run concierge so that you can figure out where to go. Or we got the apps now, the local gyms with, well, not just the gyms, but where exactly to get your pool swims in and all of that kind of stuff checked off. And of course, all the apps and Google Maps and everything like that to help everyone figure things out. And packing your nutrition is also a key factor. So I really appreciate you sharing all of that information. And if anyone's looking to follow you, they can always get you on Twitter at Jessica Post and on Instagram as well at Poststatic if they're trying to get in touch with you or communicate. So once again, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what else you have planned in your triathlon journey in the next couple seasons. Can't wait to see about that next 70.3.
Thanks so much, Coach Lloyd. Thanks for everyone for joining too.
Have a good one. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button.